What's up? It's Sam Ekstrom in for Ron Johnson. Ron Johnson's at Disney World hanging out with Kirk Cousins. We'll tell you about that next.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
What's up? It's Sam Ekstrom in for Ron Johnson on the Ron Johnson Show, joined by sidekick Luke Inman of Locked On Sports Minnesota, filling in as we'll talk here about some Minnesota Vikings free agency plans in the opening segment. Ron also banked an interview with former Marquette and Duke college basketball star, local Champlain Park product Theo John is on the show today. Excellent interview with Ron and Theo after we talk some Minnesota Vikings football here in the open. This show is available for free wherever you find your podcasts and free on YouTube. Just subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota and comment below, what do you think the Vikings should do next in free agency now that the dust is starting to settle? Luke and I talk about that in a moment. We want to remind you, too, that today's program is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more at FanDuel.com/LockedOn, a great place to get started. Before we talk Vikings free agency, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman, I'm sitting working at my computer yesterday. Ron Johnson's at Disney World on vacation with the fam in Orlando. I get a photo. There's Ron, there's Ron's kids, there's Ron's wife, and there's the Minnesota Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins.
Come on.
In the Marvel store.
Come on.
Now, you know this, Luke. You've been on with Ron for a long time now. Ron loves Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Ron loves superhero movies. He loves superhero analogies. He loves comparing athletes to superheroes. He loves it. So it's classic that he would find Kirk Cousins in his favorite store. And apparently they hung out for a while. So Ron's got the scoops now when he comes back.
Yeah, you look at the scouting report, like you said, Ron, such a diehard, such a fanatic when it comes to Marvel. Kirk Cousins' background, he said he grew up going to Disney World every summer. So you got Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck versus Iron Man and Hulk. I would love to be a fly on the wall listening to those conversations they had down there. But yeah, pretty cool, pretty hilarious to see what Ron was getting into and who he bumped into as well down there on his vacation. Pretty fun.
Hopefully that leads to an appearance for Kirk Cousins on the show. He and Ron can talk about their mutual love of Marvel. That's hopefully coming up down the road on the Ron Johnson Show. Coming up on this episode of the Ron Johnson Show, I'm going to ask Luke Inman, what should the Vikings do next in free agency? I think that a lot of the big moves, at least for now, seem to have been made. Maybe there's some bombshells coming down the pipeline. I know there's Lamar Jackson whispers. I don't know how founded those rumors are. We've still got Za'Darius Smith decisions, Dalvin Cook decisions seemingly have yet to be made. So where are we at? What needs to happen, Luke, between now and the draft for the Vikings to kind of wrap up this free agency period? What's on your to-do list?
You take a look at what they've done thus far in free agency. You try to get in the head of Kwesi and the vision he has for not just 2023 this year, but 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And just based off some of the signings, the decision to release some huge names and staples that have been in Minnesota for what seems like a decade, Kendricks, Thielen, not to mention guys like Cam Dantzler as well. And I think most importantly, the decision as of now not to extend Kirk Cousins and let him play out the final year of his deal. It tells me, Sam, that number one, I think he wants to rid himself of this cap mess once and for all that Rick Spielman and the old regime left him when he took over. And two, he doesn't want to overcommit to guys in free agency, and instead he wants to build this team back up through the draft. And you can see that with all the 1, 2, 3-year deals. In fact, I think it was even you last week who mentioned he's never dished out a deal longer than 3 years, probably because of the fact, again, some of those long-term contracts, they do get so inflated near the end, and between the void years and then just kicking the cap down the road, you really do yourself a disservice in the long run. We all know he wants to create enough room to sign his foundational pieces too, like JJ, Hawk, Darisaw, continue to build off that young nucleus. And I think continuing to rid himself of some of these bloated contracts, like paying Dalvin Cook $15 million, has got to be at the top of the list. You can save 6 if you cut him outright, or you can save 8 if he's traded. I think finding a suitor for Dalvin Cook is priority number 1 right now for Kwesi, and finding a way to net something like, I'm projecting a 3rd rounder for him is probably what he's shooting for, just based off the Christian McCaffrey deal. Obviously, he's younger. A lot of people think he's better. He went for a 2nd and 2/3, so something to think about. Personally, I think you find a way to keep Za'Darius Smith around just after the season he had last year and the way he impacted the pass rush. And I think lastly, most importantly here, Sam, I think they all need to sit down and come up with a game plan around the quarterback position and what they want that to look like long term. And if it's drafting a guy, then sitting down together and talking it out with KOC and Wes Phillips and determining who's the right guy for your scheme and system. And is that guy in this draft class? And if so, I guess how high do you need to move up to go get him? If he's not in this draft class, then doing everything you can now to set yourself up with enough ammo next year to move up and take a swing on a guy. Because like we talked about on the football party today with Reggie Wilson, I think sooner or later here, Sam, they're going to have to take a swing on one of these young guys in the draft and hit the reset button on their quarterback cap hit and just let KOC do what they brought him in here to do, which is find and develop their next young quarterback for the future.
I think that the cap conversation right now is kind of compelling because we do this every year, Luke, and we got to learn. We always go into the offseason saying the Vikings have no money. They can't do anything. And somehow Rob Brzezinski and company find a way. They get very inventive and they open up all this space. And the Vikings have somehow managed to fit in Marcus Davenport and Josh Oliver and Byron Murphy under the cap. Dean Lowry under the cap. They have finagled their way using clever contracts and void years, and obviously the money gained from Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins restructure, Eric Kendricks release. They're under the cap. And they still have za'darius Smith potential move, Dalvin Cook potential move, Brian O'Neill restructure. So, Luke, the Vikings could still clear a boatload of cap space if indeed they wanted to make one big splash move. Maybe it's an OBJ. Maybe it's a Titanic move like a Lamar Jackson. Not saying that's going to happen, but they do have moves left to be made to open up cash. I'm going to take the more conservative route here. And let's just say that they don't make a massive splash move. There's one guy who's still sitting out there, Luke, who I kind of want back. And his name's Duke Shelley. Where's Duke? Why isn't Duke on the team yet? A lot of people have told me, well, you can sign Duke anytime. Duke will be here. He'll be there. Well, Oliudo, that was an easy one. He's back. Austin Schlottman, Nick Mullins, like those guys, they made the easy moves. Those guys are back. Why isn't Duke Shelley back? I don't think it's going to be as easy to get Duke Shelley as people assume. And maybe I'm wrong. But have you dug into the Duke stats from last year, Luke Inman? 3rd highest coverage grade in the NFL in 470 snaps. That's not nothing.
Man.
He had 11 pass breakups in 470 snaps. The guys above him who had 12 had like 1,200 snaps, 1,000 snaps, 800 snaps. The guy, Sauce Gardner had 14. He had 1,100 snaps. Darius Williams led the league with 15. He had 1,075 snaps. Duke Shelley had 470, and he was 6th in pass breakups. Completion percentage against him, 48.9. That was 6th in the league. Passer rating against him, 59.6. That's 9th in the league. So basically split this up into any metric. In about half a season of snaps, Duke Shelley was a top 10 quarterback last year in the NFL. So I don't think he's just going to come easily. Like, I think Duke Shelley actually wants to get paid, and I think he might be waiting to see if there's a team that's willing to give him a little bit more money. But I think the Vikings should want him, Luke. So that is actually, for me, as priority of a free agent as you can get in terms of like in-house guys that I want to bring back. Duke Shelley, what do you think?
You think about this, it's a small sample size, and I think that's the only leverage he has going against him. You know, teams like the Vikings and other teams, maybe he's testing the waters in free agency, say, yeah, you balled out, but you didn't do it for that long. But still, he was one of the lone, rare bright spots on that defense last year, and a diamond in the rough as far as a roster development standpoint, and a guy you would just love to keep around, especially given the price that it would probably cost to keep him. And then the fact that you're already pretty thin at cornerback, especially after letting a guy like Cam Dantzler go and then gambling on just kind of two still unknowns, young, raw, untapped guys in Andrew Booth Jr. and a Caleb Evans. Cornerback is a position now in the NFL, Sam. You can't have enough good guys, especially when teams spread you out 3, 4, even 5 wide. You got to have guys that can cover. I'm with you. I want Duke Shelley back. I know a lot of the fan base does as well. And you look at the Twitter, too. You see the cryptic tweets he's tweeting out. I'm going to bet on me. What does that mean? Does that mean the Vikings are offering you just a 1-year prove-it deal and you got to go prove it again? I don't know. I'm sure he's fielding some offers. Probably nothing that, maybe hoping to get as far as a year-by-year value goes. But I still think at the end of the day, you got to find a way to keep this guy around, just given how great he was last year, as you mentioned. And then, again, just what a need it still is, both from starters and a depth lens as well for the Vikings defense.
Yeah, so that's one part. I've got just a very conservative 3-step plan. Sign Duke Shelley, sign another veteran wide receiver. I tossed this out on the football party with Reggie Wilson, Mecole Hardman, someone that can stretch the field with speed. They're not going to demand a ton of targets. There's just no room for the football to go to Justin Jefferson 180 times and someone else a bunch of times. You got to have a supplement, a complementary piece. Mecole Hardman with his speed would be a good field stretcher, and I think he comes at a decent price. So you sign Shelley, you sign Hardman, and you create that space by trading Za'Darius Smith for a day 2 pick. So you get the cap savings, you get the asset in the draft, and you create space to make a couple of nice complementary signings to this roster. That's my 3-step plan between now and the draft. I'm not asking that much, Luke. Am I being greedy with that? I don't think so.
No, not at all. And again, just given, the cap restraints, I think all those guys are more than realistic, more than reasonable to bring in here on some relatively modest deals. And the thing about trading Za'Darius, I think the fact that they signed Marcus Davenport gives them the freedom and flexibility. I think, of course, perfect world, dream scenario, of course they want Za'Darius back. But if for some reason they can't figure out an extension or a renegotiation and get a deal done, they have some flexibility now, some breathing room to where you still have 2 capable starters in Danielle Hunter and Marcus Davenport. And again, on that 1-year deal, Marcus Davenport's going to do everything he can to earn a starting spot as well and go out there and make a bunch of splash plays too. So I like the vision. I see what Kwesi's got written down as far as the blueprint goes. I still think at the end of the day, quarterback, circle that position. I'm very interested and curious what the long-term plan is there for the Vikings' future.
All right, coming up, Ron Johnson sits down with Theo John, Champlain Park High School grad, Marquette Golden Eagles, Duke Blue Devils. He was involved in Coach K's final game, the Final Four against North Carolina last year, and I had a personal connection to Theo as well. When he played for Champlain, the 2017 state quarterfinals, I got to call Champlain Park's buzzer beater to beat Chaska. We play that back for Theo during the interview and get his reaction to that moment. It's really good. Theo John coming up next with Ron Johnson after. I remind you that this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. March Madness is here. NHL and NBA coming down the stretch. A great time to get in the action and the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's #1 sportsbook. And if you're a new customer just joining, get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if that first bet doesn't win. You can try again with that bonus bet. Download the FanDuel app. Safe, secure, very easy to use. Hundreds of ways to bet. Seriously. And you can load up your bets within the same game, a same game parlay, a chance at a big whopping payout. FanDuel.com/locked-on. Claim that no sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets at FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel.
Well, now it's time to hang with Ron Johnson. And, like I told you guys, man, as a wide receiver, I mean, I've talked to Keenan McCardell, talked to Justin Jefferson. We know that Justin Jefferson clearly thinks he's the best hooper in the Minnesota Vikings locker room. And so our receivers, man, we love hoops. And so I always love to get basketball players on the show. And we have a professional basketball player, grew up in the state of Minnesota, played at Champlain Park High School, went to Marquette, then to Duke. And that's where I learned a ton of basketball watching him play against Armand Bacot, because everybody in pickup basketball loves to throw that leg under you when you're trying to post up, especially me. And if Theo John hadn't gotten 2 early fouls on Armand Bacot, I would have never realized you cannot put your leg under me when I'm trying to spin off of you. But got to bring Theo John in, man. Appreciate you for joining me on the Ron Johnson Show. Champlain Park High School, the era of basketball players. I mean, when you talk about Minnesota basketball players, you got Amir Coffey, you got McKinley Wright, you got Theo John, you got Jalen Suggs, you got Chet Holmgren, and everybody. I grew up in Detroit. So I'm a Detroit kid, born and raised. I grew up with, Jalen Rose and Chris Webber. They're older than me, but I was in, 12U AAU when they were going to college. And I remember them kind of going to the ABDC camp. I don't even know if that's still a thing, but they met some guys there and we all know the story now, Juwan Howard and, Ray Jackson and Jimmy King, and they all ended up at the University of Michigan. When you look at McKinley Wright and yourself, and we've heard the Jalen Suggs on podcast talking about McKinley Wright and went to Minnesota, maybe he would have went to Minnesota and so forth. But, just to get it out there, man, like when you're being recruited by your hometown, team, what was that like for you and what was that process like?
Man, first of all, thank you for having me.
No, appreciate you.
Blessed to be here. It's a surreal experience though. You feel very fortunate being recruited by your home state. You got fans going crazy. Different places you go, just going to get food. You get go Gophers, little things like that. But at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for you, and you got to remind yourself that all that glitz and glamour, there's another side of that too, being at home. So there's a little bit more pressure and all that other stuff. So but the whole process was just really fun and surreal, and to be able to go through that with my teammate McKinley, my brother. I mean, I feel really blessed.
And I know we kind of talked off camera beforehand. And when you look at recruiting, and I kind of asked you, Ben Johnson had been the head coach and he had honored and kept McKinley Wright and said, you know what, I want this point guard. I'm not all for this New York. Nothing against New York. I know Kenny Smith and everybody swears New York is the hotbed of point guards. I think that's true for some. Some they overdo it with all the extra stuff. Dribble the ball up, pass it, get it to the big man. Like, keep it simple. But when you think about that with McKinley Wright, if he had decided to go to the U under Ben Johnson, let's just change it up because we're going back into, back to the future. Could you see yourself following your high school teammate to the U?
Me and McKinley had a lot of conversations, and the time was what the time was. We were given the opportunity then, and that wasn't the case. We had a great relationship with Ben Johnson, and great recruiter, great coach, and I'm excited to see what he does with the Gophers in the future. It just wasn't meant to be at the time. Yeah.
And did you cross over with Dawson Garcia? Were you guys teammates for a little bit?
Yeah, we were teammates at Marquette.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah. So when you look at him, and he had the opportunity to come back to Minnesota, and he did it. But what is it about Dawson Garcia as he grows in his game? I guess you'll say that people haven't even seen yet.
I mean, he's a really good basketball player and a really good dude. He's hungry, and he just loves the game and loves to work. He loves the grind, and seeing him day to day in the summers when we're working, I mean, he has a really bright future. So I'm excited for him.
And when you look at yourself, again, Marquette, you graduated, decide to go, and you have another shot. You get recruited by Coach K. I mean, That's the greatest basketball coach in the history. I mean, he's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of college coaches. I had a friend back in 1998 when I played, D Bryant. He went on to play football at Duke, but the only reason he chose Duke was because of basketball. He was a two-way player. So, Coach K let him play. I think he played for like 2 seasons, him and Reggie Love, who was Obama's body man. That was back in their time. And he played, I think, 2 years at Duke. But he was a starting quarterback. So that was the main reason why he went. But of course, having a chance to play on Duke's basketball team, how can you say no to that? Be a, 8th, 9th man off the bench. And that's what he did. I got a chance to watch you play at Duke. But again, when you're choosing a second go around and you're like, hey, I'm done at Marquette. I appreciate everything you guys have done for me. I've used up all my eligibility, but now I have this additional year. What drew you to Duke?
Like you said, the pedestal, Coach K. He's very persuasive when he wants to be, and he held true to everything that he said he would. Just being a part of that year, going to the Final Four, and just being a part of his last ride, and just being able to sit back and really see what makes him so great on a daily basis taught me a lot. And I was also able to teach what I learned at Marquette to some of the younger guys, and being there in a little different position. A lot of those guys were one and dones and a lot of talent, and be able to give them kind of what I experienced 4 years in college and be able to teach them to help better their careers in the long run. So,
yeah. And when you look at that transition, Duke, the NBA and Duke is kind of synonymous. You look at Trey Jones, Tyus Jones, all these Dukies, you got Jahlil Okafor if you want to go way back. And then, of course, you got the Grant Hills, and, I can go on and on. But how did Coach K really prepare you for being a pro and what you're doing now?
I mean, just discipline and consistency. He really lives by what he teaches, and seeing that and his level of professionalism, both on and off the court, how he's able to just lock in and stay locked into his goal and his pursuit is just, I mean, it's inspiring to see and inspiring to follow. So he's a very easy coach to follow, and obviously his track record speaks for itself. But that level of respect that you have for him, it's almost like you don't want to let him down in a certain way, and what his expectations and his standards are, so you live up to him.
And I had Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey plays with Detroit Pistons. His dad and I were teammates with the Baltimore Ravens, and he was recently on the show. And I talked about like basketball players, because we're seeing videos now of LeBron playing tight end. I think he was like a junior in high school or something, and then he was done. At what point in your life did you kind of walk away from football?
It was at 7th grade. I only played 1 or 2 years.
Okay.
I always loved football. I miss it, and I really dearly wish I would have played in high school and just kind of seen how far it would have taken me. I mean, at Marquette, I was 6'9", 270 at one point, and
right.
Just would have been an amazing defensive end for somebody.
Okay, so defense end, so not tight end. So you're not taking the Tony Gonzalez, that route. You're going defensive end.
I don't trust some linebackers with my knees, man. I know where they're aiming. I seen a leg go the way it ain't supposed to, and I'm like, yeah, let me go be on that pursuit. So
okay, so you got the aggressive football mindset. So how does that? Because again, basketball, we know every sport, basketball, football, but basketball now is not what it used to be. The Charles Barkleys, they always talk about that on TV. Right. But you have that mindset of a bruiser, of a guy that wants to bang, a guy that you don't shy away from contact. How do you think that's helped you? With that mindset that, like I can bang with anybody.
Yeah, well, it's helped me and hurt me. I missed that era of basketball where it felt like a gauntlet for real. Yeah. Now it's real show pony, and it's a different game. I mean, I love this game too, but growing up, that was the game that I fell in love with, and that's the guy I grew up wanting to be, just kind of like that asshole on the court. You know what I'm saying? With that football mindset, just I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm better. And I fell in love with that side of the competition of it, and that's transparent in the football field as well. So I don't know. I ain't retired yet, so somewhere back in the closet.
get some cleats, a helmet, shoulder. I mean, 6'9", 270. I mean, man, like, yeah, that's you can't find that anywhere in a grocery store if you're looking for a football player. So definitely something to think about. But like I said, definitely enjoy watching you. Like I said, I watch like this time of year, especially March. Like, I can't wait to take a picture of my office because I always do it every year. But I got 2 laptops, I got an iPad, and I have a TV up here on the wall. And I got all the games on. Like, I'm watching them all. I'm working. So for my bosses out there, like, man, is he actually paying attention? Yeah. I'm working, but I'm watching. And so, but it drilled down last year. Yeah. So you guys end up having to play North Carolina. And we know Baycott is one of he's an awkward big man to me. Like, he looks really awkward, but for some reason he makes it work. Like, he throws his weight around and it works for him. But you ended up, because you ended up in early foul trouble, right? Because of him, or did you get him?
It wasn't because of him. It was them zebras out there. But you look back at that game, and it's similar to what we just talked about, how the game's changed.
Yeah, because I mean, it didn't look egregious. Like, I saw you had the arm, which is legal, and you had the leg, and then he kind of like fell over your leg, but they tried to say it was a foul on you. So I know, like, because I see a ton of guys at Lifetime. And I always have that argument now. And I call it the Theo John rule. I'm like, y'all must have watched the Duke North Carolina game, because I'm like, it's you can put your leg there, but you can't put it between my leg. So I always wondered that, like, where did that fall between the refs maybe planning and him falling a little bit and him being a little bit awkward, and you just trying to put body on them and them changing the game. But are you noticing that in the NBA now, or do you get a little bit more leeway in the NBA?
Well, yeah, I mean, the NBA is like we talked about, it's a different game.
Yeah.
It's very offensive based, and being a ref is a hard job. So I know they're doing the best that they can. Long rule book that I don't really want to read. Just I know they don't. But as far as the college, in the Final Four college standpoint, it took away from the game a little bit, in my opinion. The NCAA, they can't find me. NBA, they still can. So it was fun. It was fun. I had a great time. It is what it is. Can't go back. Can't change the calls. It's part of the game. And that's really. I have a lot to say, but that's all I'm going to.
Definitely no, because I definitely watched that game, and I had Duke in there, but it is what it is. I know Duke right now is, and I said this like a week before the show, Sam can attest to it. We get into the Daily 3, but I had Duke as one of the best teams that's going to enter, but they're going to end up in a weird position, which is a 5 seed. And that's always that weird position, because you get a really good 12, and that's what they're going to run into. But they had a hurt point guard. They had some players out. They are the scariest 5 seed, I think, in this tournament. But when you watch Duke now without Coach K, what's the biggest difference you're noticing?
Honestly, I see a lot of carryover. I mean, Shire, he has big shoes to fill, and he knows that. But he's going to be an amazing coach for them, amazing offensive, defensive mind, and just I see a lot of potential there. I mean, Duke is going to be Duke. I mean, the brotherhood, you know what I'm saying? Like, Duke is always up here. And Shire filling those shoes, I mean, he has a great team around him, assistant coaches, and just the whole personnel and entourage that comes with Duke is really holding them up. And I'm really confident in what they're going to do this tournament. I'm excited. It's a dangerous 5 seed. They can really grew into who they are now. Beginning of the season, a lot of people counting them out. So I'm proud of them young dudes. They pulling it together, and in the right time too. So.
And when you look at your, career, because I know, having 2 schools, where do you find yourself cheering like Marquette and Duke when it comes down to like the season, tourney time, all that stuff?
I'm cheering on both, man. They both Big East champs, ACC champs. It was a real great day the other day. Really proud of both teams. It's weird, balancing. I always get the question, if they play each other, who are you going to root for? 4 years in Marquette, Final Four at Duke, last year at Duke, like, it's really hand in hand. So I'm going to cross that bridge when it comes to it. Right now, they both got my love, both got my full support.
Well, yeah, and when you think about, your time right now as a professional, and you look at some of the names in the NBA, like Summer League and all the training, all the stuff, who are some players that when you saw, one, you were like, man, that dude is really that dude, or you were like, you know what, I can play with the best of them, and there was a pro that you ran into and you really just held your own.
Yeah, it's at this level, everybody's that dude. You know what I'm saying? They're that dude wherever they come from. They've been that dude their whole life, and that's kind of the part I love about it. There hasn't been one specific person where it's like, oh wow, this is him. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
I felt no matter who it is, I can compete with the best, and that's what this league is about. Really confident in my playing. One player that I kind of had an moment was most recently we played in Mexico City playing Kenneth Fareed. That was my brother's favorite player growing up. And in the heart of the competition, I'm not thinking about none of that. But after the game, I was talking to my brother, and he was just like, he brought it up to me, and I'm like, that is kind of like a surreal, cool moment. Like, I remember being I feel like it was middle school, and my brother always watched. It's Denver playing. We're trying to watch them. So it's there's definitely some people that's gonna humble you out here, but at the same time, I feel like I can humble some people myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's the name of the game. And then you grew up or trained with Hoops and Christ, and I know there's a lot of players, Paige Beckers at UConn, and what's his name, Jiggy. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he went to Michigan State from not De La Salle, but Creighton, Durham Hall. You got like Jalen Suggs has been over there training. I've seen JP McCure way back in the day. He was there. When you think about that, that type of training where it's body, but it's also mind, heart, and soul as well that goes into that Hoops and Christ training. What have you learned the most from that group?
Man, I mean, first of all, Chauncey Holmesworth, who's running that, has done an amazing job just connecting basketball and just the human side of it too. Just bringing good people together and just teaching more than the game. I've learned, and I owe so much to that program and just who has helped me develop as a person and as a player. And I'm really grateful because, like I said, you are who your company is, and just being around good people and being around like genuine people who are trying to help you helps so much in this business, because a lot of it can be fake at times, and you can get stirred up with the wrong crowd, wrong people. People don't have the best for you in mind. And, I've never once questioned Hoops and Christ. It's brought me closer to God, and it's brought me closer to my dream. So.
Yeah, man, that's huge. And so, now you're a father, and you've got another person's life you're responsible for. Like, even though you've only been a father for a short amount of time, how did that change your whole perspective on life?
Yeah, so long story short, this last summer the day I found out that I was going to be a father actually was the day I found out I recently had a bad knee injury. And it was really 50-50 on if it was going to be career ending or not. Mm-hmm. So I found out that the same day I found out I was going to be a father. So there was a few months where I was kind of in a fog and really leaning on my faith and just figuring out life and just really who I am to this point. And I'm very grateful for all of that. Being a father, it changes your life, and you don't really know what people are you hear it, but you don't really know what people are talking about till you in those shoes, you in that position. And it's something, this is one thing in my life that I'm going to be very, very proud of as far as like Final Four, all of this basketball, like that don't mean nothing. I have a son to raise, sons that I can pour everything I've learned and been taught and everything I've accomplished, pour all that into him, and hopefully he takes that next step and just pushes our bloodline forward. You know what I'm saying? Like that's really what I'm gonna leave on earth. So
that's what's up, man. That's what's up. And when two more before we jump into the daily three, that's 3 questions, 3 minutes each with myself, Sam, and Theo John. When you look at college basketball, the scope of college basketball, it's completely changing now with NIL and with this transfer portal. And you're seeing a mass exodus at times at schools, which I think is okay. If a coach leaves and you don't think the new coach is going to have you, by all means, go somewhere else where you can play, because nothing's stopping coaches from going to find better jobs either. But when you look at players like Dennis Evans for the Gophers, he had signed, and then all of a sudden he gets a better NIL offer, goes to Louisville, who's not a better team. The Gophers were 9-22. Louisville was 4-28. So clearly it has nothing to do with the record of a team. But when you look at that and you see college basketball, do you think that's sustainable where, these top players are just able to jump ship and go to the next school? Or do you think at some point they're going to find a way to reel it back in and kind of create a more, I guess, normal process, I guess I'll call it?
Yeah, I think it's funny because this was never a problem when coaches would do that.
Right. True.
I remember our state tournament, our senior year. McKinley Wright was committed somewhere. Head coach left. He found out the day of that game. Wow. And I mean, as a high school kid, when you commit somewhere, your life, like your dream, it doesn't crumble, but it pivots. Yeah, that's big. That's a big thing for somebody in that situation. And I think it's funny how now the players got some power and everybody's, going crazy. Because at the end of the day, you get a job offer times 3 your salary. I mean, what you going to do for your family?
True.
You don't know what that kid's background is. You don't know if he providing for or who he providing for. And, people frown upon a player doing that. But if a coach go take an NBA job or a high-level D1 job, nobody thinks twice. So it's interesting to me and seeing how this is all developing and how NIL at first was supposed to be such a huge thing, kind of realized that it's not as big as people thought it was going to be. And that people are in these positions where you have to decommit from somewhere where you thought was going to be best, and whether it be financial, whether it be good coaching staff, whether it be believing in a dream or believing in a coach or a coach believing in you, there's always going to be a headline, you know what I'm saying? Whether player, coach, administrative, just got to do what's best for you and block out all the noise. So to that player, best of luck to you. And, you dodged a little bit of cold up in Minneapolis, but hopefully that's the best move for you. So that's really, really all I can say about that.
Yeah, definitely. No. And so last one before we jump out of here and get to the daily 3, that's 3 questions, 3 minutes each with myself, Sam, and Theo John. Last one, you grew up in Minnesota. And so I'm pretty sure you followed the Timberwolves, you followed Kevin Garnett, you've seen those teams. When you think about an opportunity, would your dream be to have a chance to come back and play for the Timberwolves?
Yeah, it would be. I almost had the opportunity this summer. I was supposed to play summer league with the Timberwolves. Mm-hmm. Then that knee injury happened, unfortunately, and took that away. But, everything's going to happen for a reason and for a purpose. So if the opportunity presents itself, I'd be more than excited to represent Minnesota, the place I grew up. I almost got to live that dream a little bit through McKinley when he was able to play at Minnesota. Yep. Watching a lot of his games and just being really proud of him. Your brother's out there doing exactly what we dreamed about as little kids, breaking into the high school late at night, throwing up some dumb shots. As you saw Sam Du Bois, his shot, that's one that we practiced 12 o'clock at night, middle of the high school. But, it'd be a cool opportunity, but, just got to do what's best for me, what's best for my family, and best for my career. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we got the daily 3 coming up next. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Remember, people, you can download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app now on Amazon Fire and Roku. Right there on your TV, just go to your app, search Locked On Sports Minnesota. You can download all of our videos, all of our shows. And I know you always wonder, what do we look like? You hear our faces on the podcast, maybe on the radio, but you wonder what we look like. Well, there's your chance. You can download the app right there. You can also subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. We have a word from our sponsors.
Thanks, Ron. Today's episode brought to you by Built Bar. Let me say about Built Bar before we get back to Theo John. The Built March Madness bracket is here. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now is your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. My personal favorite, the Cookies and Cream Puff. I hope it wins. Hope it gets all your support. When you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered in a drawing. 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built bars, and one lucky fan gets a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly to your door. Why do you want Built bars? Best protein bar ever. Low in sugar, high in protein. 100% real chocolate. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. Vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick.
Well, now it's time for the part of the show that I love the most, and that's the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. I'm going to give most of the time to Theo, and I'll pick up where he leaves off. Take it away, Sam.
All right, we're going to improvise here. I'm going to try something new. So, Theo, because you brought it up, we're going to do something called a screen share. I'm going to bring up the shot that you just referenced. Let me set this up. This is Sam DuBois, the tie game. It's 50-50, Champlin and Chaska at Target Center, state tournament. So there's McKinley by half court. Theo, you're posted up on the block. You're going to crash for the rebound. I'm announcing the game. I am the voice with Khalid El-Amin in my ear. He's the color guy. And here's how it went down. I want you to react to this after we watch it.
Target Center on its feet.
You have to help. You have
7 seconds left.
You have to help.
Right for the win.
No.
Off the backboard, no. Tipped out.
Oh.
A 3 at the buzzer. Good.
Oh.
It's good. DuBois wins it for the Rebels. Unbelievable.
So you just got hammered on that rebound, Theo. I mean, you got nailed. Were you okay?
You know, the funniest part about all that is I didn't even see the shot. I got hit, and I remember I got a hand on the ball, and then I don't know what happened. Just didn't see nothing. I just heard everybody going crazy. And, man, that locker room, I wish there was a camera in there. It was a fun time, and really happy with Sam. That's, like I said, you've been practicing it too, so people can't just say it's luck.
What did you practice? The tip out, or what part of that was practiced?
Every practice we had afterwards, he's sitting there shooting half court shots, just random off lay, off the right leg, off left leg, this right hand, left hand.
Yeah.
So it was no surprise. It was very fitting. It was a perfect moment. He was a great player off our bench and pulled us through when we needed him.
That was awesome. That was a big one for me too, because I was pretty young at the time as a broadcaster, and they played that on ESPN, and I was pretty fired up. So I just wanted to get your reaction to that.
It's like the Blake Hartfarber.
Yeah, actually, left-handed too, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Theo, I wanted to get your take on another big basketball event for you. So January 24th and January 27th, 2017. I went back through all your old box scores. You had 2 triple doubles in a week of points, rebounds, and blocks. What do you remember about that week? Why were you so dialed in?
Say the date again.
So this was January 24th and 27th of 2017. You had a triple double with blocks. Do you remember that at all? Do you remember?
I feel like that was against Park Center because that was our rival back then. And then I forget who the other game was. I think it was like Park Center Hopkins or Park Center. Mm-hmm. But either way, you know, we had an amazing high school team. I'll put this out there for argument for future people in this podcast. Best high school team put together, especially in Minnesota. We could compete with anybody, and that's without hesitation. We had a good time. A lot of fun, and you know, triple double, blocks, rebounds, points. Like that's what I do. And teammates put me in those positions and just capitalized. You know, had some fun out there. Probably played more than the second half too. You know, being a good team, it was a crime because we only got to play the first half most of the time.
Right. That was Park Center and Coon Rapids. You had those games against.
I was gonna say that's a big statement though, because you got to look at like Tyus Jones and Gary Trent. You had J.P. McCure and his team. That's a big one. I like that though. I like that.
We did lose. We lost that championship. We didn't win the championship, so people will always bring that up. But look earlier in those seasons, we beat those teams that we lost to considerably. So again, I'll put it out there. y'all can go ahead and argue it.
I like that. I like that. I like the blocks though. The fact that he had triple double with like no assists and it was blocked. That's crazy to get 10 plus blocks in 2 games. That's doing the dirty work. That's doing the stuff nobody wants to do. So I got to get my hats off to that one. What you got next, Sam?
Yeah. What's the craziest thing, Theo, that you saw in the student section at Cameron Indoor Stadium?
Craziest thing. This wasn't specifically in the student section because believe me, there's a lot. Many things got me out. I'm locked in usually. Many things, disrupted that a little bit. But the fact that they camped out for like months on end in the cold, like it's middle of winter basketball season, they're intense outside, still going to classes, still doing the schoolwork, all to get into the final game of the season is crazy.
Wow.
But love their support, love their enthusiasm. There was not one game where we were ever bored. That's for sure. Blowout, close game, no matter what it is, they're gonna show up, and that's why you got to do. That's why you love to do.
Yeah, I will say I'm trying to think. Like I've never seen anything on TV. I just heard the stories of like the Duke North Carolina rivalry games. Like I've heard I think it was Shanahan or one of the sons of a dad that played at Duke. Was it Shanahan, Sam, that played at Duke?
Oh man,
I think it was
remember.
Kyle. I think Kyle Shanahan was at Duke for like a year, but I just heard it was either him or I forgot the other one, but I'm pretty sure it was Shanahan. They drove from Duke and Shanahan rode in the trunk to get to North Carolina with Reggie Love, his body, it was Barack's body man. He was in college. And then like one of them passed out in North Carolina and ended up online because he got teabagged at a party for falling asleep. Like it's just like, and then I think when they came back to Duke, like Duke did something to their students. I mean, it was just like, I've heard so many stories. So I know that rivalry alone is crazy. And that's what I was going to say. You guys face them all the time, but then to face them in the tournament, how much more? It is a little audible. Omaha, a little audible here. How much like more intense was that facing your rival in the March Madness?
It was very intense. There was a lot of pressure on these young guys. It was the game that we prayed for, especially losing the last home game in Coach K-Net. It was a game that we wanted back so badly, almost or too badly.
Wow.
Again, I'll give North Carolina credit. It's one time I'm gonna do it. They played a good game. They made shots when they were supposed to, and made big plays when they were supposed to. But that is a game that we will always want back because I mean we were the better team, and they just were the better team that night. So
yeah. What you got next, Sam?
All right, last one, Theo. I want you to don't hesitate to brag a little bit. Take us through your best in-game dunk at any level, high school, college, whatever, pro, whatever you want.
Best in-game dunk. There's a lot of them. Honestly, my most memorable dunk was probably in the Final Four. I remember dunking, doing my scream, and then just looking in the crowd and just like being at awe of the amount of people that were there. I remember just making eye contact with my brother who then had a few down in New Orleans, having a good time for himself. It was that moment where it was like my family's here at the Final Four watching me play in the Duke North Carolina game, Coach K's last game. Like it's something that's gonna stick with me for the rest of my life. It's gonna be that story that I tell my kid about, and so may not be the most embarrassed or like poster dunk, whatever, but it's as far for me, that's probably it right there.
Yeah, I'll say memorable is memorable. For me, I've never dunked in a game besides like Lifetime Fitness because I quit my junior year in high school. Me and my coach got into it. And I just was like, I'm done. I'm a football player. Like I'm out here trying to help you out, and you give me a hard time because I was sick. I missed one of the practices. He thought I was skipping school. And granted, I was an inner city kid from Detroit, Michigan. So I know I had some bad teammates. Like we had some rambunctiousness and guys, doing stuff they shouldn't do. So I get it. But I wasn't that kid. And so I kind of got annoyed that he thought I was like skipping school and skipping practice to be with a girl or something. And so I was like, man, I'm done. And so I just quit. But I will say my lifetime fitness, like dunk, that a lot of people, there's two, don't want to give me credit for one of them because I dunked on a girl and she played at Ohio State. And I don't know if you remember our mom battle or I forgot the other brother battle. They played at Benilde, but their older sister played at Ohio State. And so she came to Lifetime in Plymouth. And I'll never forget, I didn't dunk on her because she like ran by and just kind of put her hand up. But I'm like, if it was a picture taken, I dunked on you.
Right.
And then the other one was just a tip dunk. But of course, everybody said I used another guy's back. But I kind of jumped over a guy on a rebound and then dunked it. So to this day, I still, you know, people that were there, the guys I still play with, they were like, oh, no, you didn't really, you cheated. You used them as a bridge to get up there. So, but I've never had an in game one though. So I like high school wise, because in high school, I was more just a shooter. I was that football player that just wanted to stay up top, give it to me. I'm gonna just shoot. Like I'm not trying to go down and bang. And that's probably why I quit too. Cause I'm like, man, I am 6'3". I am 200 plus pounds in high school, but man, I'm like, I don't want to bang. Like I just want to shoot. Let me shoot and let me be done. And so that was kind of my way of playing basketball. And so that's still to this day, that's what I do. I just shoot. Like give me the ball, I'm gonna shoot. And yeah, I'll bang every once in a while, but I try not to because Lifetime Fitness and LA Fitness, these dudes take it too serious. They take life. And you probably know Joey King.
Mm.
So played for the Gophers. He's a lot older than you, but he plays with us. He's 6'9", you know.
I do remember him. Was he?
Yeah. So he's one of those guys that because he played college basketball, he assumes that he should just be able to beat us. Cause like Jamal Bushamala, Blake Harfarver, Al Nolan, like all those guys play. But Joey's just the one that like, you know, he hates losing. Like he hates losing, especially the football players. And so we got to remind him like, yeah, he might be 6'9", but he's not Theo John. He's not thick. You know, like you're a big dude. Like this dude is like super skinny. I'm like, man, we'll move you across the court. So, you know, just chill out. But I want to thank Theo John for joining me on the Ron Johnson Show. And Theo, every time before we get out of here, I always love to let guests give them, you know, kind of give themselves a note. So if you were to be able to write a note to yourself that you can open, let's just say you want yourself to open it 50 years from now. And it's a note to yourself, or you go back into the past and it's 15-year-old Theo, it's 12-year-old Theo, and you're going to leave yourself a note to kind of help yourself or give yourself just a pep talk. It could be 18-year-old Theo, and you're like, hey, go to Minnesota because it's worth it. I don't know what it is, but if you could give yourself some advice, what would you give yourself, past or future?
You know, it's two things. One, I say be where your feet are and lean on God, take care of the rest.
Mm-hmm.
The second would be the second would be what my father told me after a third grade basketball game. One day you're going to say, I wish I had, or I'm glad I did. And you determine which one you're going to be.
No, I like that. I wish I had, or what was it? I wish I had. I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, that's Theo John and Ron Johnson. That was Sam Ekstrom. We want to thank you for joining us today on the Ron Johnson Show. And remember, people, if you want endless Vikings talk, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube, where you can find all of our videos, all of our shows, instant podcasts after every game, and the Vikings press conference delivering all the biggest news. Like our videos and leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and let us know what you think. What is the best thing you've seen Theo John do if you've seen him in high school, Duke, North Carolina? And then if you had to pick between Duke and North Carolina right now, who are you guys saying the better team is? Let us know in the thoughts comment section below, and we'll want to thank you and have a great day.